From the studios of Foxboro Cable Access, located in the center of Foxborough, Massachusetts, you are watching Around Foxborough.
Hello and welcome to Around Foxborough, the show where we talk about the people, places, and things that make Foxborough the gem of Norfolk County. My name is Mark Rivard, and I am pleased to have as my guest today, Michael Merline. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here.
Great to have you. And we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, music.
Mm-hmm.
So,
One of
Michael,
my favorite topics, too.
Yeah, you're a big vinyl collector, and
Yep.
you sell vinyl as well.
I do.
So I have to ask you the first question. People always ask me this, so I'm going to ask you. The first piece of vinyl you ever bought, the first album, what was it?
The Bay City Rollers.
Bay City. Would it be the
Right
album
there.
right there? Oh, okay.
Right there. That's the genuine
Article. Wow.
And it's first in my shelf, so it always reminds me of what I started with. Yeah.
Basically, SATURDAY.
Exactly.
So basically, you started back in the late 70s.
Late 70s. I was about 10 or 11 years old, maybe 12, and went to a music shop, saw that, brought it home, listened to it, and listened to it every once in a while. Yeah.
So, all right. So you want to know my first piece of vinyl?
Yes.
The first album I ever bought, and I still have it today? AC/DC, Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap.
Nice.
Bon Scott, lead vocals.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. And I still have it today.
Yep.
Of course. I never got rid of any of my vinyl. I have some of my sister's vinyl that they didn't want.
Right.
Then I built up my collection as well. So, but I never got rid of any of my vinyl.
Me either. I
And I
still have everything I bought. Yeah.
So you go around, I mean, you sell vinyl too,
Yep.
right?
I do. It just became such a passion to meet people who appreciate vinyl and know a lot about musicians and music and the vinyl itself. It gives me a chance to talk to them and educate myself and educate them on something I may know about some bands and some records. And I do it locally around the area. I just finished the Attleboro Winter Market at the La Salette. That was very nice. A good group of vendors at the Winter Market. And in June, I'm going to start to sell it at the Music Wagon in North Attleboro. It's right on Route 1. The Music Wagon sells and rents musical instruments. Mm-hmm. And I met the owner and he and I talked. He likes music also. And he's like, how about selling some of your records at my store? Like, sure. So I will start in June.
Excellent.
Yep.
I mean, it's great. Vinyl was so big, obviously, back in the day, and now there's been a resurgence. And you see all these brand new copies of older records. They're repressing them and everything. But for me, yes, I'll buy some of that because if it's a new, like the new Rolling Stones album.
Right.
Yes. Did I buy that on CD? Yes, because I like to have it on my iPod. Did I buy it on vinyl? Yes. Of course I bought it on vinyl. So now they got me twice. But it's all the new releases coming out. When it comes to the older stuff,
yep.
I don't know about you, but I tend to I want the original prints.
Oh,
I want the original vinyl. Try to get it in playable condition if I can.
Yep.
But I'd rather have that for some reason than the newly pressed. I don't know. Do you agree on that?
I agree. The price of a brand new vinyl is $35 to $40. And there are a lot of people that will still pay that amount for a brand new album. And vinyl is so big. In April, there's Record Store Day, and the whole world gets ready for that. They wait in line at 6 a.m. for it to open at 9 a.m, and a lot of record stores sell out of what they have in their inventory. And I do like the older and original versions of vinyl. I do have a lot of older albums. And what I really like to do is to listen to one musician or one band from the beginning of their career to middle and further down, and listen to the changes in their musical styles, their lyrics, and even their instrumentation. It's almost like a history, a chronological history of learning about a particular band. One example is James Taylor. He had one of his original albums was James Taylor and the Flying Machines.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to that. Then I listened to another of his albums later in his career. And there's such a distinct difference in the sound of his singing and lyrics from the Flying Machine album to another one of his albums later in his career. So I put the Flying Machine album back on just to make sure it was James Taylor because it was so vastly different. Of course it was, but just so vastly different. And it gives a great time capsule of someone's career in the recording industry.
Yeah, and you see that, I mean, the perfect example is the shirt you're wearing right now, the Beatles. How they went from, the pop,
Right.
2-3 minute songs to
Yeah.
the psychedelic era
Yeah.
to, whatever. I always think of a band like Led Zeppelin, where they went from the real bluesy, basically ripping off the blues from blues
Right.
musicians. And then all of a sudden they started settling in. They started doing a little bit more acoustic, a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then as they got near the end of their career, John Paul Jones started taking charge a little bit from Jimmy Page, and they started becoming
Right.
more keyboards and more bass and
Yep.
more. The way the band progresses, you can hear it on each album. A
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit, a little bit, a little bit.
Yep.
And that's what makes some of the the best bands great, because they can do that.
And I think naturally as people age, musicians age, of course, they have different experiences along the way, and they write about those experiences along the way of their career. And it's like they're writing poetry, but they're putting music to it and they're recording it. And there's been, many musicians have had good and bad life experiences, and a lot of them become some of their songs.
Yeah. And the thing about vinyl, and you can tell us more about this, but I remember when I got into CDs. I love CDs. They're compact discs. You bring them in the car, which you can't really do a lot these days because
No.
most cars don't have CD players.
Exactly.
But anyways, the sound was so crystal clear. But
Oh, yeah.
in reality, the clearest sound you will get from music is actually vinyl, because it's analog vinyl.
Right.
It's not digital, because they take the analog, they compress it to digital. Then you
Yep.
get streaming, where you compress the digital to compressed digital, which is probably the worst sound.
Oh,
Although
yeah.
to the naked ear, you're like, well, that sounds the
Yeah.
same. Well, yes and no.
I watched a documentary on the making of Led Zeppelin 4, and they recorded at a house isolated somewhere in Michigan, I think. And the documentary said, listen closely to the beginning of one of their songs and you'll hear this. And I think with vinyl, you will hear it, but I think with other forms of music, you won't hear it. So very small innuendos of sounds can be heard on vinyl better than other formats.
And you also get the actual way that the artist intended for you to play the tracks.
Exactly.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. On the first side, of course, you have to take the time to flip it over and then listen to the other tracks. But if you listen to it in order, as opposed to cherry picking tracks on Spotify, that's the way the artist intended. And you get to look at a nice big picture. Sometimes you have the lyrics on there.
Exactly.
You don't get that streaming.
One thing that catches me off, if you have a double album, it will be side 1 and then side 4. And on the other vinyl, 2 and 3. And it's been consistent on double albums that I've played. So I'm wondering what the reasoning was what the reasoning for that was. Because I think our brain automatically would flip over side 1 to side 2 and hope to hear side 2. It caught me off guard with a a live album. I heard the first side, flipped it over, not knowing it was side 4. At the end of side 4, the band said, "You've been a great audience. Thank you so much. We really love being here." And then they played their, final song. I'm like, wait a minute, this is side 2. How can that be happening? So there are some things that they did with vinyl that they don't do with other formats.
Yeah, it can drive you crazy. But
Yep.
I mean, you get a piece of vinyl a lot, and I've noticed this a lot of young kids, I say kids, for you and me, kids are in their 20s,
Yep.
30s maybe, but they actually take the old vinyl and they just frame. They don't care about the vinyl itself,
No.
the covers.
Right.
They just frame the covers. I mean, now granted, the ones that I have framed are autographed. I've
Right.
met some artists
Yep.
in my radio days
Oh,
and other
nice.
days. But the artwork on some of these albums
yeah.
is just incredible.
Yep.
I mean, the like the Yes album covers.
Yep.
Some of those are just fantastic. Iron Maiden with Eddie.
Yep.
It's just, that's part of the collecting too, I would imagine.
Some vinyl is valued more for the artwork than the recording itself. You may not know the name of a musician, may never have succeeded, but the artwork on the cover itself has a very high value. And to your point, that's why some younger listeners are putting it up as a collection. The other thing younger fans of music, live music are doing, if their band is selling a vinyl record at a show, they're buying that vinyl record, but then they're taking that silver gel pin and asking them to sign the vinyl itself.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't care about playing it. They'll take it as a collector's item, put it up on their wall, and it will never see a turntable needle in its life. Yeah.
Which is, hey, if that's what you want
Right.
to do with it, I always prefer to play it.
Yep.
I'll have the artist sign the actual cover,
Right.
but I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one big reason why vinyl has come back, because they like doing that. Another reason, they've listened to their parents' music, which their parents' format was vinyl, and they get curious about it. They discover it. They go to the record shops to get older vinyl, classic rock, or any type of music, but it's always on vinyl. And then even to this day, you'll see teenagers, people in their 20s and 30s wearing classic rock t-shirts, AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Led Zeppelin, James Taylor, because it's all influenced from their parents' music, which again was on vinyl.
Yeah, and they buy it at Hot Topic, or they buy it at Target or Kohl's. You see all the shirts for all the classic
yeah.
rock bands.
Yep.
It's incredible how that, it never goes away.
No, never goes away. And now their children will listen to their music, and it will continue.
Oh, I've seen it at concerts.
Yep.
I remember, there's a quick story. I went to see Paul McCartney. One of the times I saw Paul McCartney, and I was down on the floor, and there was a woman there with about 3 13-year-olds there. And this is back, I want to say probably about 30 years ago. And I'm thinking, like, aren't you supposed to be seeing, like, NSYNC
Yeah.
or Backstreet Boys?
Right.
And they're like, and they had signs that said, "Paul, you're the greatest. Paul, we love you." And
Marry me, Paul.
and they looked at me with disgust, like, why would we go and see them? And I turned to the mother and I said, "Great job. Great job."
Yeah.
You're bringing them up right.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
the parents' influence. For me, it wasn't my parents. It was my older brothers and sisters.
Right.
Listening to the radio back in
Yep.
the 80s. You heard all the classic, and that's what I listened to. So it wasn't a parents thing. But these
Yeah.
days, the parents are the ones influencing the
Yep.
kids. The kids are seeing it everywhere.
Right.
They think it's hip. I mean,
Yep.
for example, another person, Taylor Swift.
Yep.
Love her or hate her, that's all you see is her vinyl all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
She's basically taking over all the record plants.
She is.
Producing everything.
Yep.
So, but that's bringing vinyl back too.
Right.
Whether it's pop stars, whether it's rock stars. You see it.
And on Record Store Day, they have new releases and re-releases. And the list for this past Record Store Day was incredible. They re-released a Talking Heads live album. They re-released a Cure live album. They re-released, not many people may not know this musician, Captain Beefheart.
Mm-hmm.
They re-released that. They re-released a David Bowie album, as a matter of fact. So the re-releases are also creating an interest with different generations.
Well, they can't get the originals because they have
No.
to spend top dollar to get those
Right.
at a record store. So they say, well, you know what? The next best thing, I get it in colored vinyl or
Yeah.
whatever, and I can play it immediately, and it doesn't cost me as much.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I love Record Store Day.
Oh, yeah.
I got a couple items this year.
I sold a few items this year. I was at a venue in Providence, and there was a live show, and I asked the owners, can I sell my records during the live show? It's April 20th, which is Record Store Day. The owners of the venue didn't know that. So like, yeah, sure. So I set up a table and did very well.
If I remember correctly, you also did something at the Marilyn Rodman Performing Arts Center.
I did.
During one of their shows.
Yep, it was a British rock tribute band, and I asked the executive director if I could set up my table in the reception room, and she like, that makes perfect sense, and I did. And anybody who walked through to look at the albums thought it was a neat idea. I sold 10 albums to one person, which he's
Wow.
a big music fan, record fan, and it was a perfect fit. I try to find events that complement what I'm doing, and that was great to do. And some of my proceeds did go to the theater, which I wholeheartedly support, and I hope to do something like that again at the theater.
That's great. So in all your so how many albums
Yep.
do you have? Your personal collection?
400.
400. Okay. If you had to pick,
Yep.
probably the most, maybe not the most valuable. It could be the most valuable, but the album that you say, this is it. This is my. How can I put it? The one you love the most. It doesn't have to be a band you love. It just the
Yeah.
vinyl, just it's perfect. Cover. What would it be? If you had to think of it, I know it's.
I know,
you
it's
want a tough
hard.
question. I don't ask the easy
I
questions.
have to pick one out of 400.
I know. It's tough.
New wave band from the 1980s, New Order.
Mm-hmm. I know
They
them.
have an album called Powering Corruption. And that was the time of the 80s decade where there was so many people taking advantage of other people in business, in society. And that album says a lot about their views on powering corruption. And the album cover itself is designed like a floppy disk, which I thought was interesting. I think what they're kind of saying is like power and corruption is right in our technology. And that I think is a great album, sends a great message, and is a timestamp for that decade when people were like being so successful, and BMWs and everything else, and Wall Street, and it's a really good album. And New Order, of course, continues to be a very influential band in the world.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any well, for me, I was thinking about that myself, and I have quite a few
Yep.
albums myself, and I was thinking, what would be my favorite, the one I love the most? And for me, it's you're wearing this shirt, the Beatles. My favorite Beatles album, Rubber Soul, and it was printed in England, in the UK. So
Yep.
it's not a U.S. capital one.
Yeah.
It's British, and I love that album. And for me, having something that was actually printed in the
yeah.
home country,
Right.
it's not a first printed, it could be a
Right.
second or third print,
Right.
I don't care.
It's from the UK.
But it's from the 60s, and it's from the UK.
Great.
So that's
Yeah.
that's my favorite
Yeah.
out of everything. And it's probably not worth a ton, but to me, it's worth a lot.
Priceless to you.
It's priceless to me.
Yeah. Yep. That's a great choice.
Yeah. So Michael, so tell me a little bit about, your business, Record Days.
Yep.
So if you want to plug it, tell us I know you said you're going to be in North Attleboro. Tell us a little bit about it and where people can get in touch with you.
You should see my logo and QR code.
Mm-hmm.
You can scan that QR code and get in contact with me. I also have a Discogs page. Discogs is the software app where people all over the world buy and sell records. And I'm only selling in the United States. I prefer to be more local than selling across the United States because I've met so many nice people at the events I go to, or even having a conversation at an event that isn't even related to music, because once people start talking about music, they get a really big smile and bring back some memories to some music that they've heard, some of their favorite music, some of their favorite concerts. So look on my QR code and scan that, and we'll have contact information.
Excellent. Well, Michael, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
being
so
here
much.
tonight. And it was great. It was great talking to you. And I can talk music all day.
I know
We could
too.
be on. If we didn't have a time limit, we could be on
I
here for
know.
like 3 or 4 hours just
That
talking.
is true.
And we'll continue after the show.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. And that'll do it for Around Foxborough. Have yourself a great day.